as who is the engineering consultant in the Center for Career Development, where he works with students, faculty, staff, and employers from various engineering disciplines, majors, and departments. In his role, Travis counsels students on their career options, reviews materials such as resumes, cover letters, and provides job and internship search strategies, planning for graduate school, and transitioning to life after UTK. Travis also provides programming opportunities for employers to engage with students on campus. He's currently serving as the secretary for the Tennessee Association of Colleges and Employers. So let's please welcome Travis Greenlee.
All right, well, good morning, everybody. Oh, the script is taped. I can't touch that. Got it. Cool. Well, hey, it is good to be here. I'm excited to be here. Usually I'm pretty, mobile, so this is good. This is good practice for me to stand still, so bear with me on that. And first and foremost, let's give a big round of applause for the Women Engineers Planning Committee. This has been great. Yes. So as Jess said, my name is Travis, and I work in the Center for Career Development. I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces in the room, which is really comforting, so I appreciate that. And of course, new faces are welcome as well. As many of you know who've seen me present before, the Bitmojis is kind of like my thing, right? So a Bitmoji, that's my little cartoon character on the screen that is made to look like me. So if you notice the resemblance, that was intentional. Good, and it is a way that I can receive cheap smiles and cheap laughter, and I accept that gladly. All right, so as I was thinking about today's presentation, right, social media and branding, we could probably talk about this in a course. I'm sure there's a course in the Communications College where we could talk about this for all year long. So really, we're just gonna hit on just a couple things that I thought were really valuable for our conversation today. And first, the question on the screen is really the main question I was thinking about as we approach this topic in particular. So how can social media work for you? So really, how can we utilize social media to help us brand and grow and enhance our careers? So first and foremost, we've got to talk about networking, right? Of course, that great word that is loosely defined so many times, but we just practice it, right? We were just doing that just now, which is awesome. And networking is so essential to what we do in our careers. So getting and staying connected. So in our networking conversation just now, you got to meet some new folks and you got to get connected. That's great. Now the question is, well, how are you going to stay connected? What social medias can we use to make that a little easier for you? So as I present, I might ask questions. I might expect a little bit of feedback or a little bit of audience participation. That gives me a break and a minute to drink a glass of water, and it gives you a minute to interact as well. Although I do appreciate hearing the sound of my own voice. And that's a little bit conceited, and I know, but I was in theater, so it's just kind of how it goes. Perfect, I appreciate the cheesy laughter. This is great. Good energy in this room, really good energy. Barbie, you know, it was good energy earlier too. All right, so getting engaged, being engaged through networking is important as well. So how can we be engaged through social media while we network? Any thoughts? Okay, tough question. Really, you can do that by liking posts, by commenting on posts, so just being active in those social medias. So the big one that I want us to look at specifically is LinkedIn. How many of you have a LinkedIn profile? Fantastic, lots of you, many of you, great. So here's the harder question. How many of you really know how to utilize that LinkedIn profile? Okay, a couple of you. Everyone that raised their hand, you obviously have met with me, so that's great. The rest of you, I'm not sure where you got your information from. I'm just kidding. So really, the big thing with LinkedIn is I would encourage you to use it to build relationships and to learn. So again, to build relationships and to learn. LinkedIn is not going to get you a job. Well, sure, it can. There is an application feature, but that's not really what I want you to focus on. I want you to focus on reaching out to our alumni, building those relationships, and learning from our alums. So how do I do that? So on the screen, what I screenshot there is within your LinkedIn, if you, in the search bar, so that's typically on the top left side of your screen, so up here for you. And I want, in that search bar, you type in University of Tennessee, comma, Knoxville. And what that does is that brings you to a page that looks just like this. And then you'll click alumni. And as you can see, we have nearly 150,000 alumni that are on LinkedIn. I don't know about you, but I feel pretty good about at least maybe 5 people responding to me if I reach out to them out of 150,000. I mean, you all are engineers, you can do the math. But 5 isn't a, you know, that's pretty easy pickings, right? I don't think I've ever said easy pickings in a presentation before. Okay, super. So what you would then do is you can use that search bar through our alumni as a filter, and you can look for folks with jobs that you're interested in learning about. You can look for folks that work at companies that you're interested in learning about. Or you could just type in your degree and see where people with your similar degree are working. I think it's a great kind of informal survey to see, well, where are our alumni going and what are they doing? And then, of course, once you find someone that you think you'd like to talk to, you click the connect button on their profile, and then you need to add a note. You've got to give these people a reason to talk to you, right? Who are you? What do you want? How do I get in touch with you? And of course, I recommend the end of that message say, go Vols, right? We've got to reinforce, because that's the one thing you have in common, at least the one thing you have in common, is that alumni connection, right? We have that mantra, Vols help Vols. Well, let's put it to use, right? Let's see it work in real life. So always end with go Vols. Super, any questions? Great, we're gonna keep moving. All right, so number 2, sharing information. We can use social media to help share information. We can share ideas, sharing experiences. So sharing ideas. I see this a lot in higher education. We've got a couple different messaging boards as well as your LinkedIn profile and this and that. And you can share ideas. Hey, I'm trying to figure out new ways to engage employers. What's been working at your school? So it's a great tool to gain information and explore new ideas. Sharing experiences. We do this all the time on Instagram, right? Specifically with food. You know what I'm talking about, right? We're out to dinner, we're eating a nice, look at the presentation on this plate. We've got to take a picture of it. For whatever reason, right? We've got to take a picture of that food, and then we share our great experience at that restaurant. We can do that in our jobs too, right? We can share this really cool project I'm working on, as long as it isn't top secret. You can share that project and highlight some of your skills and experiences that way. So when we think about sharing ideas, what's probably the #1 social media tool that helps us share ideas? And I'm going to give you a hint. It helps us share recipes. Pinterest, yes, absolutely. Pinterest, my wife is on Pinterest all the time. I've got one. I'm a little bit new to it, but I'm starting to figure it out. And it's a great resource to look at what other folks have done. So my wife's a speech pathologist, so it's really great in her field because she can see a lot of the different activities that other speech pathologists are doing with their students. And I think it can be helpful in higher ed as well. I'd be very curious to see what that looks like in the engineering field, to see what kind of engineering Pinterest boards might exist, whether that's drawings or Revit tips. It could be really, really interesting to explore. Let's move on to number 3. So the third reason that social media can help you in your job is marketing, of course. This is a key point of social media. It's easy to do. And it really gives you a chance to highlight, right? It gives you a chance to highlight your work, your skills, some of your cool internships, some of your cool projects. How many seniors in the room? Quite a few of you. Let's put your senior design projects on your social media, right? Those projects are so cool. You're partnering with industries. Let's highlight those. And that's free marketing for the college. They're not going to complain if you highlight some of those cool projects you're doing, right? Anyone from marketing here? Yeah, you know what I'm saying. Okay, good. And I think, so for myself, I wanted to give you a pretty tangible example. So on the screen is a picture of my LinkedIn profile. It's not perfect, although I do think that's a relatively charming photo. But again, my LinkedIn's not perfect, but I really like my little summary section. And that my font is a little bit too small, but I really like that last line, and I'll be honest and say that last line, it's kind of a marketing tool for me, because I'm selling to you that I'm dedicated to equipping students with the tools and resources they need to navigate a changing career landscape. Like, that's a pretty good sentence. Again, I'm biased, but that sentence, sure, it's telling you a little bit about my purpose and what I do and a little bit vocational stuff, but that's also a marketing sentence, without a doubt, because I'm highlighting what I do and how I work with students. Okay, so how can social media work for you? We talked about networking, check. Sharing information, super, and marketing. Cool. Any questions so far? So far, so good. Excellent. So let's shift gears a little bit, and now let's talk about personal branding. So we've got a lot of different logos on the screen. I would assume most of you are familiar with most of them. As you think about those logos, how do you know the company is being represented in those circles? Like, what experiences? That's not a great question. As you look at those logos, how do you know them? Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. Right? It's McDonald's. We know that. We know that from the logo. We know that from the little jingle. How do you know Coca-Cola? Right? That was a pop can opening. Oh, sorry, that was a soda can. Soda can, not pop. I don't even know what pop is. It's like I'm from the Midwest or something weird. I could tell you a short story about how I got made fun of on like my first week because I said the word pop, but we'll move past that. So we know a lot of these logos. We know them from their taglines. We know them from their slogans, their jingles. By the way, I was a little bit nervous to sing McDonald's, but I felt like I did okay. I felt it was on pitch. Maybe a little flat. I didn't really warm up this morning. That's beside the point. So all these things we know, they impact the way we view and see these organizations. So I think a question I have for you is, how can we utilize some of these same strategies for our own personal brand? So when you think about yourself and what you represent, we need to think about, well, what kind of values am I representing? Is there a slogan associated with me? I don't know. Slogans may be hard. I tell you what, I'm going to contract Oprah to be my spokesperson. I'm sure she's available, right? It's pretty cheap. But really, when we think about spokesperson, sure, we easily can think about, Morgan Freeman or Oprah, and that would be super cool. But more realistically, our spokespeople, they're our bosses, they're our colleagues, and they're the folks that you're working with. We know word of mouth is so powerful. I think every survey I've ever seen in relation to events and programs at a university, word of mouth is always top 3. About, well, how did you hear about this? Word of mouth, right? So we know how powerful that can really be. So I've got a couple quotes here, and I'm going to read it, and then I kind of want you to reflect and just think about it for a minute. So a brand is essentially a container for a customer's complete experience with the product or company. And the key equals differentiates and positions a product above others. So what do you want your container to be filled with? And really, how are you differentiating yourself and your brand from your peers? The pause is definitely for effect there. Okay, so at this time, I would like you to take 2 minutes, a minute to 2 minutes, and think about, what is your brand? Right? I see a lot of you have notepads and pens in front of you. Jot some ideas down. What's your brand? What's your image? What's your mission? What are your values? And what's your vision? So go ahead and take just 2 minutes, maybe a minute, and write some notes. Okay, I don't want to wait anymore. Does anyone want to share something that they wrote down in regards to their brand? Maybe a value they have? Anybody? Yeah, Jess, what do you think?
So I think my brand definitely revolves around women in STEM, women in engineering. When I got my placement at my new job, they said, we placed you here, and there's a lot of strong female leadership, which we know you're into that. So obviously that projects into what I do because they saw that.
Thank you for sharing. Okay, cool. Well, we will move on. So let's talk about communicating our brand. So Jess gave a really great example about how her commitment to women in STEM kind of reflected into her job search, and specifically some feedback, positive feedback she heard directly from her employer. So let's talk a little bit about what are some tangible ways you can communicate your brand. So work style, right? I can tell you for myself, I'm very collaborative, very energetic, and I'm sure many of you are not surprised by that, which is a good thing. In reference to your email, you know, I think we probably need to think a little bit more about our emails, because we're emailing all the time. It's the gift and curse of the work field today. Email, gotta love it, can't live without it, can't wait to shut it off sometimes. But how is it that when you compose that email, what's the brand that you're really sending? Sure, so a lot of us at the university, you look at our signature line. What's unique about some of our signature lines? I can think about one colleague in particular, and she's got Smokey in her signature line, and I love it. Kind of makes me smile every time, which is not something I necessarily have in my signature line. I know that I'm big on, when I send an email, I always say, hello, Jim, or hello, Jess. And some folks, I know when they respond, they don't necessarily say that hello, they just kind of get right to the point, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm incredibly relational in my values and what I do, so I think it's important for me to always say, hello, Dr. Cox. Hello, Dr. Kobza. And then I always say thank you as well. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Take care. Personal appearance, I think it's very appropriate that we mention this today, because I think that there can be a double standard, of course, when we're talking about men versus women and dress, and specifically about how folks can be judged at work or in the workplace. So personal appearance, it might be something that you really want to think about. I mean, it's prevalent in all of our work, and it's part of our brand. So sometimes, I guess that's just important to think about. Specifically, I remember a student coming to me and asking me, she was preparing for an interview, and she kind of pulled her hair back, and she goes, what do you think about these? And I was like, what am I looking at? She goes, well, all my earrings. Like, is this a big deal when I go and I interview? And I said, wow. You know, I gotta be honest, I've never even thought about that before, but I'm so glad that we can talk about this today. I said, at the end of the day, when you're in this interview, you don't want anything to necessarily take away from the skill and the value that you have to offer. So if you think that that's gonna be frowned upon, maybe you do take some of those out. At the same time, I also understand that if you want to bring your whole self to that interview, and you know the earrings is part of who you are, and that's part of your brand and your appearance, I think that's fine. So did we necessarily come up with an answer? No. Was it gray? Absolutely. And I'm not 100% sure what she ended up doing. I don't recall. If you are in the audience and you know it's you, let's talk. I'm just kidding. So let's talk a little bit about those intangible ways that we communicate our brand. And so that first impression, that handshake, right? That's important. We put a lot of weight on it. They say first impressions are formed within 30 seconds of meeting somebody, so that's obviously critical. Leah, how are we doing on time? 5, 4, 3, 5. Okay, perfect. High five. Super. Attitude. Attitude's big. How many of you have worked on a group project with someone that's pretty Debbie Downer? If anyone's named Debbie, there's no offense to you, I'm sorry. I know a lot of great Debbies in my life, and I don't know why Debbie Downer just stuck. It's more probably an alliteration, but let's move on. So, right, that person with the bad attitude, you don't want to work with them. And that's unfortunately part of their brand, whether they realize it or not. Behavior at events. We can go so many directions with that. How people behave in a public setting is important. How people behave when there's alcohol involved. That can really tell you a lot. I've heard stories of several companies, how they will intentionally bring their recruits to a bar, and they'll have a social environment, and they'll see how that student chooses or not chooses to drink responsibly. And that can be a huge determining factor in whether or not they bring that student on board or not. So that can be a big part of your brand. So let's talk about positively shaping your brand. Using social media responsibly. Yes, absolutely. And I think using it responsibly touches on those three things we talked about earlier. Highlighting your involvements. Share your successes. I mean, this isn't necessarily a time to say that you're the best student in the world, but it is appropriate to say, oh, look at this great project. I'm so proud of my team. I'm so proud of what we accomplished. Absolutely, that's a great post. Sharing your research. I'm really excited to present today at the Women Engineers Conference on the research that I've completed in my senior year. Fantastic. And then be consistent. I think this is important. It's not, if you really want to have a positive brand and you want to have a positive presence on social media, you can't just post once a year. That's not going to do it for you. So you need to be consistent. And being consistent really helps enforce your brand as well. If I'm really nice on stage, but I'm a jerk off stage, people are going to know that, and that's going to impact my brand. I'm allowed to say jerk? I'm being filmed? Okay, sorry, good. So let's talk about the dark side, right? The ways that we can negatively shape our brand. I really wanted to have a picture of Darth Vader on the screen, but I didn't think anyone else would like that as much as me. So negative ways of shaping your brand, really, so gossip, negativity, oversharing, bullying, these are all things that could easily get you fired from your job. There's no question. So I recently read an article, and it talked about 5 social media mistakes that ruin your career, and all 4 of these things were on it. So we need to be smart about what we're posting and how we're posting it, right? There are ways in which we phrase words. Good one. There are ways in which we can phrase things that, maybe we shape things more to emphasize how we're learning. I had a challenging day at work. Worked with a student that taught me a lot about X, Y, and Z. Okay, I kind of reframed that. That could have sounded differently if I would have said, I worked with a terrible student today. They were super difficult, and they were unreceptive, and they were mean. Okay, probably not the best example in the world, but you can hear the difference in the 2 tones, and one of them was a little bit more positive about me learning from a student, and the other one was just me complaining. So tangible examples, 2 that we really need to hit on, politics. So in today's society, we have a lot of opinions about politics, some quite polar opposites, and posts revolving around politics can really impact your brand. It can impact how folks see you, how they think of you, and it can impact you in the work field. So I was talking to a colleague about this presentation yesterday, and she had shared with me that a friend of hers got fired because they posted a very negative post about someone that's currently in politics. It was super vague. It didn't play any sides on that. It was nice, right down the middle. It was good. But they lost their job because they decided to post pretty rashly, pretty harshly about an individual in politics. So it can happen, and it's serious, and there can be serious ramifications, so you got to be careful. And, of course, drinking. Now, let's see. For some organizations, drinking can be part of the culture. It can be pretty normal. And others, maybe not so much. So an easy, tangible example I can give you, so if let's say I'm a 5th grade teacher, me posting to Facebook several drinking pictures is problematic, right? Because maybe that gets back to the parents of the children, maybe it gets back to my principal, not a great idea. However, maybe some other cultures, if we're out at a happy hour and it's a team building experience and we just had a big meeting or we just landed a big contract, maybe that's a little bit different because we're celebrating something and we're celebrating an accomplishment. So whatever that looks like for you, just be cautious and wary and make sure that you're being responsible. I feel like I need to end that with a DARE slogan. Okay. So really, that's pretty much the essence of my presentation today. Ways that we can enhance our brand, ways that we can use social media to help us grow and enhance our reputation in our workforce, in our professional reputation. So thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it, and give yourselves a big round of applause.